In a big NewsX exclusive, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has spoken with NewsX's editor-in-chief Rishabh Gulati. During this riveting conversation, the Prime Minister has spoken about the SKOCH Group's report titled Employment Generation Impact of Modinomics, the Paradigm Shift. The report aims to address the employment generative impact of structured credit from formal sources. It in fact also aims to highlight the Indian reality of fractional employment and its treatment. When delving into the report itself, it claims that since 2014, an average of 51.4 crores person to years of employment have been generated annually. That totals 514 million jobs over 10 years. In fact, the PM Mudra Yojana alone contributes 25.2 crores steady jobs per year. Now, in this telecast, we will take a deep dive into this report, which takes into account 12 central schemes, which include the PM Awas Yojana, the PM Mudra Yojana, amongst many others. Now, before we start this discussion, let's quickly listen in to what exactly the Prime Minister said on this issue during this exclusive interview.
स्कॉच का रिपोर्ट पढ़ा होगा और मैं चाहता हूं कि आपका टीवी चैनल ने स्कॉच के रिपोर्ट पर डिटेल में स्टडी करना चाहिए और टीवी डिबेट करना चाहिए। उन्होंने सरकार की कोई 20-22 स्कीम का डिटेल एनालिसिस किया है और कितने पर्सन ईयर आवर इस देश में उपलब्ध हुए इसका पूरा आंकड़ा है। उन्होंने कहा 4 करोड़ घर बनाने चाहिए तो कितने आवर लगते हैं, मतलब इतने लोगों को रोजगार मिलता है। वैसे उन्होंने 22 जगह ऐसे अलग अलग पैरामीटर पड़ेगा और उन्होंने कहा 50 करोड़ लोगों को ये इसका बेनिफिट हुआ है। दूसरा, हमने मुद्रा योजना निकाली, बिना गारंटी हम बैंक लोन देते, यानी शायद 23,000 करोड़ या समथिंग अबाउट है, या 23 लाख करोड़। उसमें फर्स्ट टाइमर 80% है। उसने कोई नहीं अपना कारोबार शुरू किया, 1 या 2 को तो उसने काम दिया ही होगा, तब जा करके चलता है। स्टार्टअप कभी हजारों थे, आज लाखों है।
Well, let's go straight across, in fact, live to Rishabh Gulati, editor-in-chief of NewsX, who's live in our studio with us. Rishabh, a very important point that the Prime Minister, of course, weighed in on during this exclusive conversation with you on the SKOCH Group report, in fact, even urging us to have a TV debate on its findings.
Well, here it is, because this conversation needs to happen. Ladies and gentlemen, the premise is simple. It's perhaps the core conversation to all economic growth, GDP growth, trillion-dollar economy, 5th largest, 3rd largest economy. It's about translation into jobs. Does it make a difference to people on the ground? Are their salaries going up? And are people graduating from schools and colleges in a young country finding the jobs? Because we always get doomsday reports that a certain percentage of so-and-so can't get, even the IITians are not being able to find jobs. There are MBA chaiwalas that are being created. In this, what is the reality check? Now remember, Uday, if you look at historical precedents, at times when mass employment had to be generated, people like Franklin Roosevelt, many others, resolved to one basic fundamental idea: build infrastructure. Infrastructure building creates the entire gamut of the jobs chain, from absolute unskilled labor all the way up till high levels of technical engineering. Think of the people boring the tunnels, think of the people who design the tunnel boring machines, the people who organize the software for that runs the metro safely. So infrastructure building does the entire gamut. Now the big question is, you have to impute jobs data in 2 ways. The problem in India is a vast percentage of the Indian economy, some would say 50%, some would say 60%, some would say 70%, some would even say 90% of India's economy is in the informal sector. So if you look at the jobs data in the US, it comes out every week. Every week you know whether employment has gone up or gone down. Germany, the same thing. You can, to the decimal point, find out what is the scope of unemployment, what's the scope of the benefits that are being doled out every week. Because of the informal sector in India, we are always only guessing. Sometimes we are guessing on EPFO data, sometimes we are guessing on employment data from private sector corporations. We are guessing. Now, a structured analysis had to be done, and that is what he's referring to in this conversation, because it's a fundamental question. And it's a fundamental question the opposition is putting. in 10 years, what jobs have been created. Now, this report, which has been done by a research firm, we call it a think tank, okay? What are they studying? They are studying that if we are to build X number of roads, X number of houses, what is, it used to be called man hours, we'll call it people hours. What is the people hours not required to work on that project? And the imputation has been that the people years, which means if you're averaging a person working 8 to 9 hours a day, okay, do the mathematics of 8 to 9 hours a day into 300 days, and the figure that you get is that all the projects, just the government projects, okay, along with the projects that have been instituted in the private sector, equal to 51 crores. So this is not the rediwala, this is not the person joining a corporate sector, this is not the person who is starting a business. These are just people part of projects that are being built. So there might be a private sector LNG plant that is being built. Similarly, there might be a government highway that's being built. And that total in the last 10 years, they say is 51.4 crore, of which 20 crore is just government projects, 20 crore person years. That means the potential to employ 20 crore people for 1 year, okay, has been generated by government projects alone. Another 30 crore per year, 30 crore person years has been generated by private sector projects. And this is in addition to the other job creation that is going on. Now, let's not kid ourselves. For every person who is looking for a job, it is the biggest issue in their minds. The question then becomes is, have we gotten past the logic that government is supposed to be the job generator, job creator and job giver, which is a hark back to socialism, because the people who don't have an option think the best option is a government job? Or have we got into the logic that job creators, entrepreneurs, projects, infrastructure spending is indeed creating all those jobs? Now, you're going to be going into discussing the report with, of course, your guests, but that's a summation of what has taken place.
Absolutely. In fact, we're going to be raising 5 big questions today on the broadcast. Question number 1, will the SKOCH report findings silence critics on the claims of lack of job growth? The big question number 2, isn't it obvious that government jobs can't be the plan for mass employment? The big question number 3, are the massive infrastructure projects across the country not generating jobs? The big question number 4, has skilling kept up with the evolving job market? And the 5th big question that we will be raising is, who has the best vision, record and plan in delivering jobs? Let's go straight across to our panel. Joining us live this hour is Dr. Jayjeet Bhattacharya, President, Center for Digital Economy Policy Research. We also have Sharat Kohli, Senior Economist, joining us live. Gyanendra Mishra, Political Analyst, is live with us. Madhav Nalapat, Editorial Director of the Sunday Guardian, also joins us live. Madhav Nalapat, let me begin with you first. On this SKOCH report and its findings, what do you make of it? The Prime Minister, of course, in fact, was weighing in on this in this exclusive interview. Do you believe that the findings of this report will now silence those critics and those skeptics who were asking what jobs have indeed been created in the last 10 years?
Well, Uday, the answer to the first question is very clearly that those who basically are looking for something to criticize and attack as a way of trying to come to power or get more seats, they're not going to stop. They're going to clutch at any excuse that they can find. Having said that, I'd like to point out the private and public sector are, if you can call them, the double engines of growth. And you can't just put emphasis on a single engine, that is the government sector, the way you're seeing some political parties in the opposition do. There has to be a double engine focus. Unfortunately, India had a single engine focus in the 50s, 60s, 70s. Only in the 80s that began to change a bit. In the 90s, it changed even more. But the point, we need that double engine thrust, both the private and public sectors working together. The second point is very clear. What is the definition of a job? Is it only going to be a regular 9-to-5 job? Or is it going to be employment? As you correctly said, the number of people hours that is being worked at. And now, and finally, you're going in terms of infrastructure. I think no one, absolutely no one can deny that in the last 10 years of the Modi government, a massive amount of infrastructure has come up across the country. You correctly mentioned about what happened in the United States under Roosevelt. That expansion of infrastructure that Roosevelt masterminded in the 1930s was responsible for the United States ensuring that the Allies had enough material to win the war with Hitler in the 1940s. And it created the foundation for very significant economic change and progress in the US in the years ahead. And that is precisely what is happening now. A foundation is being laid for progress, not just a physical foundation in terms of highways and infrastructure, in terms of housing. And yes, may I say, very importantly, toilets, for example, or may I say, methods of cooking. But the digital infrastructure, and digital infrastructure in India in some ways
Yes.
is much better than even in the advanced countries.
Absolutely. Absolutely, it certainly is. Stay with us. In fact, let me take that across to Sharat Kohli as well. Sharat Kohli, your sense of the SKOCH report findings. What do you make of what has been revealed in this report? The Prime Minister obviously saying in this interview as well, don't take my word for it. Go through the report and go through the contents and do the analysis yourself, do the maths yourself on how many jobs have indeed been created in the last 10 years. And do you also believe now, Sharat Kohli, that through the findings and through also the analysis that will happen post that, we are getting a sense that government jobs cannot be the plan for mass employment for the future moving on henceforth?
Well, good evening, Uday. Good evening to my fellow panelists and to the NewsX viewers. Well, first of all, why did Prime Minister say that you should debate the SKOCH report on your channel? Because this report is technical, this report is analytical, this report is not in the customary way we used to measure employment, how many people got the jobs. Or, even the Prime Minister spoke of the EPFO as well, but not the traditional way of measuring through EPFOs, or as you rightly said in your opening remarks, a scattered way and a guesswork of calculating how many people have got jobs. That is why, the opposition and some of the critics, they used to straight away say that unemployment, nobody can question when you declare unemployment, and nobody can question when you declare employment, both ways. Now, I think this report gives you a direction. This report provides an answer. So, which is why Prime Minister said that deep dive into the report or analyze this report to help people understand that what are man years, what are person years. Well, some of the people, I would say most of our viewers in NewsX may not have heard of these terms, that what are person years, what are man years. So here you calculate, the aim of the report is to calculate not just a 9-to-5 employment, as Professor Madhav Nalapat said, not just you're being on a muster roll, collecting your salary or your daily wage in the evening. The idea is that did you really earn out of whatever job you were into? Whether you were employed, you were a contract labor, you were a daily wager, you were hired for so many number of days under Manrega or something, or very importantly, Uday, very important point, did you generate employment for yourself? That were you self-employed? This is where he talks about the Mudra, 23 lakh crore Mudra loans when he talks about. Now, this person who's taken in 85,000 rupees of an average Mudra loan, well, some of the critics said that these loans went into buying television and refrigerator for homes or a motorbike for homes. But when we spoke of 25 crore people coming out of multi-dimensional poverty index, we had a new way of measuring poverty. Till now, poverty was about you're not having a bank balance, you're not having money in your pocket. But here we looked at poverty in the way that people have been now not deprived of certain basic amenities of life, like health, education, lifestyle. In a similar way, Uday, this is a similar way that the way you measure employment is not by just simply being on somebody's rolls. If you have been able to make your living yourself by a Mudra loan or by any other scheme of the government, you are employed, not just employed yourself.
Yes.
Now, these people who've got average loan of 85,000, Uday, they have also been able to provide employment to 2 or 3 more people.
Absolutely.
My average says 2.2 more people being employed. So I think there is a very wide and a very different way of looking employment, which is why this report becomes very important. So I think people who measure unemployment by customary way, first of all, my opening remark is, first of all, they will have to change the whole dimension by which they look at unemployment and not just keep repeating that this country has got record unemployment, which is unmeasurable and unconfirmed and uncertified of that.
Okay, so yes, the measures of and the ways of looking at it should also evolve is what you're clearly saying. Let me take that across to Dr. Jaideep Bhattacharya. Dr. Jaideep Bhattacharya, your take on this report, on what you make of the findings so far, and whether this is actually giving an accurate picture of the employment, the jobs created in the last 10 years, and also then the fundamental question that do you believe skilling over the years has also kept up with the evolving and changing job market in the country and the world today?
Absolutely. The job market or the employment market has to be defined by both supply and by demand. So the skilling leads to the supply part of it, but that's obviously not a sufficient condition. It may be a necessary condition, but not a sufficient condition. There has to be a need for these skills to be used. And as my fellow panelists, both Dr. Kohli and Professor Nalapad mentioned, that we were looking at jobs in a very, very different way. We were looking at somebody being employed and getting a monthly salary, and therefore the EPFO will also reflect that the person has been hired. However, that is not the way the Indian economy is structured. The Indian economy is structured with a large number of micro enterprises and also individual entrepreneurs, and therefore they do not reflect in the formal data. And hence, when we are looking at the amount of employment created, which is different from jobs, it has to be looked at in a very, very different manner, and the calculation will always be a guesstimate. Even the report that we're talking about is a guesstimate, but it provides an additional way of looking at an estimate of how many jobs have been created. Also, please do note that this is in the backdrop of the fact that globally, in most economies, there is massive job loss happening. India is probably the only economy, as per this report, where jobs are actually getting created. And it's not just a few employment opportunities, but very significant number of employment opportunities. Let me go deeper also, is that the government has been focused on 3 sets of infrastructure. One is the physical infrastructure. We have seen flyovers coming up, metro trains, river ports, regular large ports, massive amount of highways, airports. When a highway gets set up, along with the highway, you will see shops coming up. There are people who are traveling on the roads, therefore they need refueling, they need food, they need all kinds of support. Yes. Those are all jobs that gets created. Second is the social infrastructure, which is large number of schools and hospitals have come up, which again leads to support for those social infrastructure, which means nurses, staff, teachers, bellboys, and so on and so forth, which starts getting jobs. The third is the digital infrastructure, which is an enabler of everything else. And along with it, there is a need to lay the fiber optic cables, the need to lay out the active components, the passive components. So large number of jobs are needed. Now, each one of them needs specialization and each one of them needs skills, which is where your question is, that did skilling play an important role? If we did not have skills in this economy, then we would have had to import them from outside and we would not have created a sustainable economy. Mm-hmm. Fortunately, it has been a very thought out strategy that the infrastructure will be created, many industries will be coming up, and therefore skills will be needed. And there has been a very, very significant focus on skill development, which has led to a balanced growth where skill and labor has been coming in, while opportunities and demand for those skills have also been built up. Yes. In that manner, we have been able to create the large number of employment opportunities that this report is talking about.
Okay, Gyanendra Mishra, come in here. On on the findings of this SKOCH report, do you accept them? Do you believe that this will end the debate once and for all on job creation? And do you believe now, then the jury should be out on who has the best vision in creating jobs for India? Gyanendra Mishra, can you hear me? Okay, I think we've lost him there. All right, let me go back to Madhav Nalapad. Madhav Nalapad, then of course there will be a debate now. And it's good that we're debating, issues like this. This shows, of course, the changing politics in the country as well. on who has the best record in job creation, who has the best vision and plan in delivering jobs for the country as well.
Look, Uday, it's very obvious the last 10 years has transformed the country. The country is very different from 2014, now in 2024. The problem is that those who are intending to try and take over the government through this election, basically they're not looking forward in terms of what the economy needs in the future, but they're looking back into time and going back to policies that were adopted in the past and which frankly were not successful in raising growth. Now, they've been asking, where are the jobs? Where are the jobs? Well, the SKOCH report makes it very clear. There has been a large number of people hours created, which basically means employment, which basically means productive activity. The point that they're skirting away from is, if you're going to basically talk about an economy in which everybody depends on a government job, well, who's going to pay for these jobs? You have a government sector. The government sector is paid for by the taxpayer. Now, if you've got only the government sector, who's going to pay the taxes for such a huge amount of expenditure? The answer is nobody. It's not a feasible plan. And the point is that what needs to be basically stressed is that this alternative point of view, which basically looks back at the past, is not feasible. It's not feasible financially, and it's not feasible in terms of the economy that is there in the world today, in which digital infrastructure and digital methods play such an important role. You have millions of young people now who are now doing well out of the digital economy in India. In fact, that economy is stronger in India than in several European countries in terms of efficiency of delivery of services. So this is the point. The point is that if you're looking back in time, in a world that has already changed and which is going to change exponentially in the next 5 years, well, you're really not coming forward with practical solutions. You're coming forward with non-solutions, passing them off as solutions in the belief that through that you can get a vote, which will enable you to come to power, and after that, well, not be able to do anything at all. So the important point is this current government, they don't just have a plan. They have a way of funding that plan. They have ways of basically ensuring that the plan gets implemented in practice. And implementation is very, very important. You can have all kinds of plans. If they are unimplementable, non-implementable, well, then those plans are worth nothing.
Sharad Kohli, come in here on one aspect that's often not talked about as well, the massive infrastructure projects, that we've seen as well over the last 10 years. Aren't those creating jobs, or are they?
Well, Uday, you pulled it out of my mouth, actually. I wanted to focus on the infrastructure, and you just said it at the right time. Well, each rupee spent on infrastructure, I reiterate that, each rupee spent on infrastructure, Uday, has got an 8 times multiplier effect. 8 times multiplier effect. And if you want me to prove this, take, for example, you're sitting in Delhi. Let's pick an example of, let's say, the Yamuna Expressway. Now, when this expressway was built, there was nothing there. It was just one clean stretch of road with nothing around there. You used to just drive and land in your destination. Today, when you drive after a few years, look at what had happened. There is a film city coming up. There is a huge, in fact, India's biggest airport coming up, which is called the Jewar Airport. And do you know the kind of economic development that airport is going to do? If you want to see, go to the Delhi airport, see the Aero City around that, hundreds and thousands of crores of projects which have come up near, notwithstanding the hotels and the kind of each hotel employs about 500 people on an average, I have checked. The film city is coming up. Number of residential projects which are coming up. Infrastructure, Uday, I can say as an economist, has got a magical effect. Absolutely magical. I mean, you can transform
the entire area where the infrastructure development has been done entirely and completely, and the number of people who get the employment. And somebody who wants to criticize that how can infrastructure generate jobs simply needs to do this. They don't need to dig into economic theories. They don't need to read books. For God's sake, they just need to visit the place once to see how many people are working there. It's as simple as that.
Yes.
More than 100 lakh crores, Uday, spent on the national infrastructure pipeline. I think even if I ignore all the numbers that are flashing on your screen, I can come out with my own set of numbers. I can call it as Sharad's report.
Okay.
And I can tell you very categorically as to how many people have got the jobs. On one quick point, Uday, before you go to the other speaker, is about skilling. Yes, I do see some deficiency in skilling because I know a number
with the
of
evolution of the
employers,
job market.
I would not like to give 10 out of 10. I would probably give 8 or 9 out of 10 because skilling, I know a lot of employers who are still looking for skilled people. They are not able to find. So you fit up round pegs in square holes or square pegs in round holes. There is a bit of deficiency, I think, where government needs to do some catching up. Over to you.
Okay, let me take that across to Gyanendra Mishra. I believe he has joined us now back. Gyanendra Mishra, if you can hear me now, I was trying to ask you earlier on, on the SKOCH report, its findings, and whether it has silenced critics like you who ask the government on jobs, on where the job growth is, where the job creation is. Are you satisfied with the findings or not quite?
Hey, hi, good morning, good afternoon, Uday. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can now.
Am I audible? So thanks, Uday, for having me here on this debate. And I know I am conscious of the fact that my all co-panelists are great economists, while I'm a lawyer by profession. So obviously, you don't expect the eruditions that they expound on this debate. But coming to the SKOCH report, obviously there have been, this is not the first time that there are the different methodology appointed to measures the development and its corresponding employment generation in the economy. As far as the SKOCH is concerned, it's a private think tank. So the first and more foremost to understand as a private think tank. And the methodology which has adopted or applied in this, specifically the credit-led or the investment-led of calculation, which is always doubted. There are critics of this and there are a supporter of this because this basically does not talk in terms of some empirical data, but it is basically based on some fundamental premises that if there credit has been taken on the investment, has some of the necessarily the higher rate of employment.
Okay, I think we've lost Gyanendra Mishra's connection, unfortunately, there. But last word to you, Dr. Bhattacharya, and then I'll take a break. Dr. Jaideep Bhattacharya, last word, closing comment from you.
Yeah, so, clearly, as you would have heard, that the employment in today's world needs to be looked at very, very differently. We have spoken on this channel multiple times about gig economy. This report is showing the impact of one, gig economy, and second, about microfinance. And based on microfinance, somebody is taking small loans, buying a sewing machine, and getting their employment generation done. Now, when somebody knocks on their door and comes and asks, do you have a job? The answer is no. And therefore, what gets reported in statistics is that this person does not have a job. But if the question is that, aapki kamai ho rahi hai, are you able to get a living and are you getting an employment? The answer is yes. And therefore, what this report attempts to do is go back into the fundamental data and see what has happened because of the data. If people have taken a loan of whatever, 80,000, 85,000, and then returned them, means that they have productively deployed those assets and therefore would have earned that much of money. So this is a pretty realistic report in that sense. It obviously, like any other guesstimate, it needs to be fine-tuned. But the fundamentals are quite robust in that sense. And I think it gives a good idea of where we are going in terms of employment generation.
All right, let's leave it at that. My thanks to all of our guests for joining us on this discussion. It's Interestingly, a discussion that the Prime Minister himself wanted. The PM had said that he had urged NewsX to have a debate on the SKOCH report and its findings. Thanks to our viewers for watching as well.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.